So now we've talked about where does sociology fit in with all of the classes, and now let's talk about where did it start. It started with this gentleman right here. His name is Auguste Comte, and he was alive in France when they were trying to overthrow the king. The thought in France was, why do we have a king? Why don't we have a government and elect people? Having a king is so outdated. And they wanted to have a government where you could vote. So he was alive when there was a lot of, violence, and when France was going through this great big upheaval. And so he thought, why don't we have a science about people? A science about people's behavior. So Auguste Comte, this is the gentleman, he invented the term sociology to improve society. And he also promoted positivism, which is using science. Instead of believing that the full moon caused the behavior, or that people were sick because of demons, he said, no, we need to use science. That's what we got to do. Now, ironically, he didn't actually use science. He kind of became a philosopher, and he would have all these different ideas. Now, the gentleman that actually did use science was this guy right here, and his name is Emile Durkheim, and he decided to look for patterns in people's behavior, and so he decided to study suicide. Now, one of the things he was trying to find out, who commits more suicide, and I want you to think about this. Do you think it's men, or do you think it's women? Do you think it's Protestants, or do you think it's Catholics? And then, is it people that are single or people that are married? That's what he was trying to find out. For Emile Durkheim, let's write down, he studied suicide rates, and he also studied social integration. Social integration just means the more involved you are in society, the less likely you are to commit suicide. So what is the answer? Is it men or women? Is it Protestants or Catholics? Is it married or single people? Let's write down the answers. He discovered it is men. It is Protestants more than Catholics, and single people over married people. And he did use the scientific method as opposed to Auguste Comte. However, Auguste Comte is the father of sociology. Now, sometimes people will say, well, I took sociology and it's just a lot of common sense. And sometimes it is. For example, if we looked at 100 people that have a GED and 100 people that have a bachelor's degree, we will find that more people make money with the bachelor's degree compared to the GED. And then they'll say, well, that's common sense. I could have told you that. Sometimes it is common sense. Now remember, you don't have to write down anything that's in blue. Common sense is just good judgment, not based on special knowledge. And sociology is empirical evidence gathered from the scientific method, and we're going to talk about the scientific method in a little bit. But let's write down the definition of empirical. It's all careful, systematic observation. Everything has been studied and everything has been researched. So yeah, sometimes it is common sense, but then sometimes it's not. For example, again, you don't have to write this down. Which group commits suicide more? Teenagers or senior citizens? Well, the answer is senior citizens. And that sounds that's a very alarming fact. You might think it would be teenagers. However, it's people that are 65 and up. Which group commits more suicide, whites or minorities? The answer is it is whites. And then finally, which day does suicide happen the most? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday? And the answer is Monday. So you see that sometimes we learn things and we find out, oh, that is common sense, but then sometimes we have to learn things and we got to find out the facts. For example, here's a bridge in South Korea. Now, they decided, they had a hypothesis. They said, you know what? What if we put pictures of children? And then what if we put inspirational quotes on the bridge? Do you think that now this is a bridge where people would jump off to commit suicide? The question is, do you think that suicide went up? Did it make no difference? Or did suicide go down? So they had a hypothesis. We're going to put pictures. We're going to put quotes. And their hypothesis was that suicide would go down. They tested the hypothesis, and in actuality, suicide went up. So that's what we mean. Sometimes it's common sense, and sometimes it's not. You have to do the research. There are two types of sociology. So you can write down sociology, and then you can draw an arrow this way, and then I want you to draw an arrow this way. Now, there is basic sociology, and then there is applied sociology. What is the difference? Basic, it's studying a topic simply to learn, trying to find out, trying to get facts. Applied sociology is studying to improve and fix problems, trying to change the world, to make the world a better place. So there's two different ways of applying sociology. And many times when you go to a sociology department at a university, you'll find out immediately, are they more basic sociologists or are they more applied? And by having a conversation, you'll find where do they fall on the spectrum. A hypothesis, a theory, and a law. Now, a hypothesis, you probably maybe remember, if you ever took biology, it's simply an educated guess. For example, people who exercise regularly eat healthy. It's a hypothesis. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. So, I gave you a hypothesis. If they put pictures on a bridge, people will commit less suicide. That was their hypothesis, right? There was a story of an elephant, and different blind men went to go and feel the elephant. And each blind man came up with different facts. This blind man said, well, I bet you the trunk is the most important. However, this blind man said, well, I bet you the ears are the most important. And every blind man had a different fact. Now, the thing is, all of those things that they're saying can be proven. You can prove that the trunk is the most important thing. Or you can prove that the ears are so important. That takes us to a theory. A theory are statements that are generally seen as true, like the story of the elephant here. However, a theory is not 100% true. It's mostly true. For example, there's a theory that if you hang out with people, you're going to kind of start to act like them. That theory is true. Now, is it 100% true? No, it's not 100% true. It's mostly true. A theory is something that it's proven to be true, but it's not 100%. Now, something that is 100% is a law. Absolute, universal. You're going to find the laws in the natural sciences, like chemistry and biology. Theories, you're going to find theories like in sociology, because we're talking about things that are mostly true. So when we talk about theories, we'll be talking about different theories in sociology. The laws, these are for the hard sciences, like Einstein's special relativity and Newton's laws of motions. Those are for the hard sciences. But make sure you know the difference between hypothesis, a theory, and law. Sociological research. Now, going back to when you took biology years ago, maybe you remember the scientific method. Maybe you remember on the wall there was a poster and it said, number 1, you do this. Number 2, you do this. Number 3. It's the same steps. The same steps for the scientific method are the same, whether it's biology or sociology. Number 1, you come up with a question. I wonder how we could prevent people from jumping off of the bridge to commit suicide. So number 2, you come up with a hypothesis. I bet you if we put pictures, people would commit less suicide. Number 3. By the way, we can use if and then when you write a hypothesis. Before we get to number 3, it says here, if students do yoga, then they will have low blood pressure. If and then. Now, of course, you can write a hypothesis without if and then. It's just a lot easier to do it. On the test, I'm going to ask you to find the independent variable, and I'm going to ask you to find the dependent variable, and you're going to say, man, that's going to be difficult to do. Actually, I'm going to give you a simple way to find it. It's very, very easy. If you can find these 2 words, you'll always be able to find the independent variable and the dependent variable. So, the independent variable, it causes change. The independent variable will always follow if. If students do yoga. If students study in a group. If students study with a computer. If students do cardio in the morning. If we put posters on a bridge, then maybe something will happen. The dependent variable will always follow. Then. So if you can find if, and if you can find then, you'll be just fine. On the test, I might flip it. Students will have low blood pressure if they practice yoga. It doesn't matter. The independent variable is always going to follow if. The dependent variable will be the other part. On the test, I'm going to ask you, hey, which is the independent variable? Just look for if. Which is the dependent variable? Just look for then. And if the sentence is flipped, as long as you can find one, you'll always be able to identify the other.